And then if we do get any comments from the audience, I'll let you know. But it looks like we are live. Good afternoon, campers. Welcome to Making Awesome Season 2, Episode 35. We are here hanging out with the ever effervescent Deedre Daniel. And she does not want to tell us anything about herself. So why don't you tell us a weird fact?
Well, I weigh myself before and after I poop every morning.
There you
Just to
go. See, now
see
that's
what the difference is.
that's how we start a podcast here at 3D Musketeers. Damn it, that's how we get it happening. But Deedre is a pretty amazing inventor, and we met, I guess, about 2.5 years ago, right? Kind of
Yeah.
right at the tail end of 2019, early 2020. Had no clue what the world was going to happen, and you came to me with this product. Can you talk about the product that you had and what you wanted to do with it?
Yeah. All right. So I had invented a card game called The Very Interesting Game, which is actually 5 games in one. Yes, there you go. And that was originally designed for in-person events. I was trying to make it as a professional speaker. And all through 2019, I was hustling to get these gigs. And I thought, all these speakers have a book. I'm not going to have a book. I'm going to have a card game. And this game is going to help people connect and bond. And it would be, part of my shtick. Right. And so I quietly, and I would say self-consciously, launched it onto Amazon about a week around the holidays, just prior to. And things started to take off. I started landing like real paid speaking gigs. And then COVID-19 hit. And as you know, all in-person events were canceled worldwide for almost 2 years. So I took that card game and I moved it onto Zoom and I turned it into a game show called The Very Interesting Game Show. And there were multiple iterations of that. I somehow became an online game show host, and that's how I survived COVID.
It's pretty amazing because a lot of people saw, I would say, they always say 80% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years. There were considerably more small businesses that failed in the past 2 years. And yet you found ways to make your system flourish and, adapt to this new normal of, so we're not going to meet in person and we don't know when we're going to go back, but we're just not going to meet in person. So deal with it.
Right.
So what was that like to be like, oh shit, I'm not going to get a speaking gig anymore. I got to change this.
Right. And my entire market was the meeting and event space, and they all were moving on to, these virtual platforms, and they didn't know how to use them either.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the first meetings, everyone was on Zoom and everyone's looking up each other's noses and people are moving around, wiggling around in bad lighting. They have piles of laundry behind them. I mean, it was really awkward for, I would say, all of us, but I took every single course I could find about lighting and sound. I was trying to figure out what to do with my hair because I don't have good hair and I couldn't go to a salon to get my blowouts that I would do before I went on stage at in-person events. So I went on to Amazon and just bought a bunch of cheap $20 wigs, like bright blue with floppy ears and
I remember the crazy bright wigs
and all that. I was like, this is just what I'm going to do. I got to have some sort of, TV semblance. Is that the word I want to say? Some sort of presence on. Yeah. Anyway, I need good hair and stuff. So, I got some pink hair and put it on. And that's what I did. And so I just started tinkering around with the actual game. And I realized that certain sections of the game were better on Zoom. And I just figured out what it was that the customer needed. And some of them would say, all right, we have 3,000 people that are going to be at this event. How can you make this work? And I thought, well, I will figure it out. And what I did is I asked them to give me some bold personalities, and I met with them on Zoom, just like anywhere between 12 and under. And I would say, all right, let's turn this into like a show. And I would record them answering these questions. I took the funniest segments, put that into a video that then they aired later at the conference. And then we would allow the thousands of people watching it to interact in chat, and I would interact with them. And so it was a game within a game. So they were commenting on the recording of the game, kind of like watching Jeopardy, right?
Right.
But they're playing along and I'm commenting with them. And that format worked out very well. But then companies wanted to do things for their employees that were all working remotely. And some of them wanted their, groups to really bond on a more intimate level. So we would break them into smaller games. I would put them into breakout rooms to huddle up for debate sections and what have you. And then they'd come back and argue in front of everybody. Then I started doing, it was kind of like, I would say, like March Madness brackets is probably the best way to describe it.
Okay.
So then the champions of the different games would then come back to compete later. So we would have these elimination rounds, and then they would all come back in later and watch the best of, at their company. So I really would do whatever worked based on what it was they needed.
And that required thinking on your feet quite a bit for this. So what was that like? Just I would assume it was just utter chaos for a little bit. And then how did that idea spark come in and say, all right, maybe we can do this over Zoom? And then wait a minute, it's a physical card game. How do we do this over Zoom? How did that go through your mind of, I can figure this out?
Yeah. And I really need to thank so many of my friends that I reached out to, because I would say, all right, I don't even know how to use Zoom. So I would reach out to friends, this guy named Rob Arturi. I was like, I don't even know how to use this microphone. And so he logged on to Zoom with me, and I was messing around with this Yeti microphone, and I don't know what the gain is. Like, what the heck is this? And I'm just messing around with the microphone. And then, my friend Kiki, she knew about lighting. And so I talked to her about that. I was like, all right, so then what do I need to do to play this game? The only way I can do this is to have a PowerPoint, like a PowerPoint presentation, right? But then I realized with the game, the physical game, I needed actual cards. I needed, right, like a physical product. But with the virtual game, I was able to change out the content on the fly. So then I realized, hold on, I don't have to deal with a designer. I don't have to deal with a print shop. I can create new cards right now. So I started making new content constantly. And I realized all of these corporations were looking for ways to sponsor these online events.
Right.
So I said, give me some facts about your company and I'll weave it into the card game in a fun way. So they could send them to me that morning even. And I would write these cards using, sometimes kind of boring facts, but I would turn it into something kind of funny. And then they would give me their logos and I would plug it into the background, like little step and repeat, patterns on the background. And so suddenly we just had these very well-branded corporate games that we were able to run, without any kind of print costs and time and delay and
gotta love it.
And all that of the physical product.
That is thinking on your feet for sure. I know. And I'm not going to call it any specific inventors, but I'm basically calling out the vast majority of the inventing market, where they've had this idea for decades. They've done nothing with it, and they're unwilling to let it change. And you said, wait, this idea needs to change if it's ever going to survive. The world is changing, and if my idea doesn't change with it, it's going to fail. What was that like, understanding that all these... Because, when you and I work together, this is, and for those that don't know, I'm holding a first edition signed copy because, it's cool. And then I've got one of the official ones that I actually use, right? What was it like going from, I just spent all of this money on physical inventory that now you had to do something with, and then all of a sudden thinking, oh crap, people can just do this on Zoom without the physical cards. What was that like?
I was okay with it because I was being paid so much more to do this on Zoom than I was on a per sale basis. So if someone buys an actual game, right, I'm going to get a few bucks.
Yeah.
But they were paying me like $2,500 to run an hour show online.
Holy shit, I'm in the wrong industry.
So, I mean, well, I mean, granted, I do need to say I did a lot of them for free up front because I
Yeah.
needed to figure out how the tech worked. I wanted to see, how valuable it was to them. And then all of these people started saying, wow, this is really funny. Like, this is the first time I've laughed in months. I've learned more about the people I work with that I've
What
worked with
is
for the last 10
laughter?
years. Yeah.
I
Right.
don't know
And
laughter.
yeah, yeah. So I had to change, otherwise I would have drowned because everyone, I wouldn't say everyone, but so many people were pushed into their homes. So they were all looking for games. Remember, everyone was doing like crossword puzzles and jigsaw puzzles and all that kind of stuff. Well, the game market exploded.
It did.
And I tried, yeah, well, with my little piddly marketing budget, I would spend like $300 a day on Amazon to
Woo.
try to get my game up in there with the big dogs on the first page. And I would break even because everyone else has this like massive marketing budget. So I just started to get buried under Mattel and, all the other massive game producers. And I thought, I'm spending a lot of time trying to market my game to total strangers. I need to figure out another way at this point.
Yeah, that is certainly a challenge. I want to point out to those that that may be watching this for the first time and don't know the game. These are not like cheap playing cards. They're glossy. They're quality card stock, right? This isn't like I printed it on my 2D printer, threw it in a box and sent it to Amazon. No, there's like, proper design done to these cards. We've got a question from the comments from Ostrike. What's
Okay.
harder, making the game or designing it? That's a good question.
Oh, I would say designing it took longer for me because in my head I had the gameplay all mapped out,
Mm-hmm.
but the trying to figure out what is a nice streamlined look, right? Like, because I want something that's unique, but also crisp and clear, and what's the brand going to be, right? What's the logo, the name of the game, all of that. There's quite a lot of back and forth on, just font. Even I don't think people realize. I mean,
Oh god,
gosh, font.
it is such a thing. Like
Yeah.
it's we got lucky. I found a font for our company that's called Asa font. It is not only open source, which means whatever you want, do with it. It is designed for 3D printing and laser cutting, which
Oh wow.
happens to be two of the main things that we do. So like we got incredibly lucky with finding a font that worked perfect. Ostrike says Comic Sans and done. Yes. But also no. Yeah, like I looking at the packaging, and this is like I'm a packaging nerd, and
Uh-huh.
it is bothered the Better Three Quarters Amber for years. And now she does it too, and it bothers her that she does it too. Anywhere that I go and we get food and there's anything to take home, I will ask for a box and I will look at it. I will inspect it. I will see how it was made. What kind of paper did they use? Like this is American Horror Story level of like looking at everything, and it is unique, but it means that I have a sense for like what works and what doesn't. And I remember talking with you about this when you got your first samples in, and you had ordered quite a few,
Um,
and it was packaged incorrectly.
yeah.
And I, because I
So
have two sets. I think this one was.
the sleeve was too tight. It
Oh,
was
that's
just
right.
ever
Yeah.
so slightly too tight. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it just wouldn't slide off. And the sleeve is important. And I have a couple of examples for people. So I'm going to reach over here. So
Yeah.
originally what I thought when I put this together. So here's the game. This is the original, and it has the sleeve that can slide off. And
Mm-hmm.
so part of the reason why I wanted to do that is I wanted to sort of guide people into the game, have some interesting text to kind of explain how it works and all that kind of stuff. I even have like a hidden message under one of the flaps and all that. But I wanted the sleeves to be able to change so that it could be branded for people buying them in bulk. So like here is a holiday. So this is a Christmas sleeve from Joey and Arletta, and they gave this away to a lot of their friends. Here's one from Multi-View. They gave this, so this is their brand color, the blue and white. And so then they have their brand right there. And then they gave these to clients. So see, it says like a gift from Multi-View. And then here's one from QGive. So they're
Oh,
orange.
yep. I know
And then
QGIF.
green, see, a gift from QGive. And they were able to give this to all of their employees. And so they all had a copy at home. So I thought it was a easy way for a company that wanted to, like a corporate sponsor of these large conferences, working at GEICO as long as I did, I thought, hey, what could I brand? And so that's why the game has that sleeve, is for part of that reason. Yeah.
And you did something that a lot of other companies wouldn't. And I commend you on it because it is a tough thing to do. Your colors are purple and white, but
Mhm.
on all of those sleeves, your color is not on there. You said, it's my game, but it's your brand. And
Yes.
you still have, the very interesting game as, the logo, but the purple is gone. And,
Mhm.
the actual client's branding is on there. And there's a lot of value to that because, again, there's that customization that they wouldn't get otherwise.
Yeah, that's right. And because I wanted them to find value in the game too. And, they can slap their game on a cup or pen or whatever at these conferences. But if I was going to convince them to buy my game in bulk, I wanted it to have some extra value for them. And that's why I did that. So yeah, that's giving up the ego of my brand and my brand colors.
That's
for sure.
something that I've always liked about you. You've never really had an ego about you, but you came from an industry that kind of required a bit of an ego, right? You were in hardcore business dev before you started this whole, entrepreneur, inventor side. What was that transition like for you to go from, working a corporate job to, F it, I'm on my own now?
Yeah. Grant, I think I wasn't supposed to be in corporate America, quite frankly. And I was always the sort of the weird one there. I mean, I even had a boss at one point in time say to me, it's always been a mystery to me why you even work here. You don't fit in at all. Like, she said that to me. I had another boss
That is
said
vastly
to me,
inappropriate to say to your staff members. I just want everybody that is listening to understand that is incredibly inappropriate. Do not say that
right.
to people that work with you.
Yeah, right. I'm not saying you should say that. And at the time I was insulted, and then later on I thought about it, and I was like,
They're kind of
it's
right.
actually a compliment, right? Like, that's a compliment. I don't want to fit in. And then I had another boss say to me, Deedre, people around here expect vanilla, and you come in with rainbow sherbet and lots of sprinkles and crazy sauces and toppings, and that's not what they're expecting, and they don't know what to do with you. And so if you're going to want to win people over, you're going to have to be a little more vanilla. Give them what they expect, because they can't handle all of these different ideas. And I didn't like that comment, but I also realized it was a compliment too. So for me to jump out on my own, it was probably just too long coming. Like, fear was holding me back. I mean, that was a stable job and a stable industry. And, why would you give that up? Right.
Hey, you worked previously in the insurance industry, right? You worked with
Yes.
GEICO.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
And go ahead.
you had some personal skills, right? Where you were good at talking with other people. I feel like that has certainly enabled you to be more successful here. Do you agree?
Yeah. And thank you for saying that. I grew up a military brat, so I had to move every 2 or 3 years, and I always had to find new friends. And where was I going to sit on the school bus or in the cafeteria? It was always this thing, every 2 or 3 years, constantly moving around. And then a lot of times the school zones would change even in that duty station. So then I was still going to another school. But when I took on this position at GEICO, it was very unique. No one else at the company had it. And I was pretty much a paid professional schmoozer. I mean, I was on the road all the time for 11 years, and I went to multiple networking events every single week. And my life was boring conversations, really. And so I thought, how can I turn these around? And how can I teach other people to turn this around? This is not unique to just one group of people, or just, everyone's struggling to connect, and we're more disconnected now at a time when we could connect even more. We have all these tools, and that's what I'm trying to help fix.
I know this might come as a surprise to a lot of people. I prefer Zoom. It's so much better. Like it's fun to be in person, but I can't have a background like this in person, okay? Like and I can't carry this stuff. When people join a Zoom call with me to like talk about what we do and how we do it, I say,
Mhm.
yeah, so we use 3D printers, of which you can see behind me, the raw material stored below it. I have the stunt double for my cat, who's our director of marketing, standing in. And, you know, there are always parts running behind us. In person, it's like, so you do what? I say, I make stuff. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then they could completely forget me. And so I have to rely on, to make sure this is the correct business card, because one of them has my cell phone number on them and the new ones don't. I have to rely on business cards that are made of
Uh-huh.
wood. That's
Mm.
how I get people to remember me. And that's really, really tough in the personal world. Like when you're talking to people face to face over Zoom, I'm the guy with the crazy background. I'm the guy with the most interesting background on a Zoom call. You have you have figured out how to be interesting but not rely on something crazy. I'm relying on the fact that I have 3D printers behind me. How have you found that to work to your advantage and then a disadvantage as well?
Sure. There's definitely good, interesting, and bad, right? And when I went through the branding of this company and I started, researching interesting. Interesting is anything that captivates your attention. But even in Roman times, they didn't have a word for interesting. So there's good and there's bad, right? There's the kind where people go, they're interesting or that's interesting. And then like they never want to be around it again, right? Like it held their
Yeah.
attention, but in a bad way. So what I'm trying to teach people is the good kind. And everything you want in life comes from other people, right? People give you proposals, propositions, they introduce you to other people, right? They're promoting you to other people, and you have to be able to attract them to you. And you need to be able to stand out to do that. You got to be interesting in a good way. So instead of repelling them, I'm teaching them, okay, these are your behaviors that repel people. So this is how you can attract them to you. And then you need to be able to stand out so they still remember you later, right? So when someone needs your services, they think of Grant first. Like, oh, you got to talk to Grant. This is your guy. I'm going to introduce you. I've worked with him before. He's fantastic, right? Like you want to be on the short list.
It's
And
true.
that's what I'm teaching people how to do. Yeah.
And you're
Did
doing
I
that
get the question?
inside of the game.
Yeah. And I'm also working on a book. It's almost finished. And then the course that I teach as well. So everything that I'm doing is focused on helping people think creatively, laugh, or build stronger bonds with others, or all three of those things. That's what I'm focused on.
Now, I don't think it is a stretch to say that you are a relatively charismatic individual where, you know, you can find a room, you read it, and you're in, right? Because you've done this for years. You are a professional schmoozer. You knew how to read a room and walk into it. Do you believe that training that you got and learned throughout the years of doing business dev work uh, assisted you in building not just a game, but a personality that was really easy to deal with?
Yes. And I think some of that also was from growing up a military brat, like constantly having to meet people. My mom would say, hey, there's a little girl 2 doors down. I think she's your age. Go knock on the door and introduce yourself. So I'd have to go knock on a stranger's door. Hi, do you have a kid my age here in this house? Like that's the kind of stuff I had to do. That's
This
a
was back
weird.
in the day when you could go knock on random people's homes when you were a kid and they didn't think you were being a piece of shit,
Right.
right?
Like it was such a strange way to meet people, but that's just what I had to do. But there's a formula. I started to break it down. I mean, a lot of times we think this is chaos and you have to have a certain kind of personality. And I disagree. You don't have to have a particular kind of personality, but you do need to be aware of certain things. There's like a formula that I break down for people. And it doesn't matter if you're shy. And this may come as a surprise. It's very nice of you to say that I'm charismatic, but deep down, I'm an introvert. And I do have to hide from people just to get my energy back. And, I am not the life of the party all the time. Like I had to learn how to do that. I had to force myself. And, after many hours around a lot of people, I have to retreat. I need to be alone. Um, anyway, so there's a formula and I broke it down. I even show people on diagrams where to stand in different events to maximize the amount of pedestrian traffic that'll be coming by you. I break it down like
By
where
the
to,
bar.
well, not always though. So,
It's an open bar.
yeah, so I have like but okay, but also with COVID though, there's certain like for instance, the buffet or what have you, it used to be one of those things where people would go multiple times, or not a lot of times they have like single serve because they don't want you touching all the utensils and all that.
Yep.
So that means they're only going to go there one time. So if you were to park yourself there, you're not going to have this constant flow of people, for instance, going back and forth because they're just going to grab their one little meal in their little box and like walk away kind of stuff. So where do you park yourself? When do you park? When do you drive? I break that down too. I break down, it's not just conversation starters, but where do you go from there and how do you debate opposing points of view without becoming hostile and why that's so critical to do that.
Very good topic considering the political climate of the world and the United States at the moment.
Yeah. And in my game, like, and especially in my game show, I tell people we're not going to talk about politics. We're not going to talk about religion. It's not that we shouldn't talk about these things. We should, but we need a break right now. And we're trying to bond, and you can't bond with other people if you're trying to sniff out their political leanings. Like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to connect with people, or are you just trying to find someone who thinks exactly like you do? If that's your, reason for existence, go find your echo chamber. Why are you at this networking event?
Facebook. Oh, wait.
Yeah. I mean, and even like the ad nauseum topic du jour, right? Like we all want to talk about the Will Smith slap or, Amber Heard's crap in the bed. Like, do we really want to talk about that right now? Or is there something else to talk about? There's so many interesting topics out there that we could just delve deeply and have a really memorable conversation that you'll think about a year from now. And that's so possible.
Like to give you a point to this, we are going to have our first video on the channel where I mention politics ever on Wednesday, because President Biden just did a massive announcement talking that they are going to be pushing additive manufacturing, 3D printing, and they're using, it's called AM Forward, and, all of these things to bring money toward 3D printing, to bring things back here to the United States to deal with supply chain woes. I'm going to mention politics for the first time on the channel, and I am ready with my banhammer on the comments because I know it's going to be a disaster of both sides of the fence trying to argue with each other. And while, yes, commenting, liking, and subscribing, which you should do, is amazing, there are things that take away from the point, which is we just got the US government to acknowledge that 3D printing exists and has value, rather than their previous acknowledgments of it, which is all people are doing are making ghost guns, right? Like,
yeah,
literally 2 weeks ago, Biden talked about 3D printing firearms, and now he's saying that we need to actually do it correctly, and I'm glad. But I'm worried that this is going to be a polarizing thing, so I'm still struggling with I'm going to write partially a script for this, and I don't write scripts for videos. So it's one of those tough things for me. Like, how do we go about this without pissing off people? And I just don't think there's a way to do it.
Well, you can establish some rules up front, right? What I like to do is I throw out penalty flags at people like, all right, you brought up one of the topics, and just throw them out at like, penalty, can't bring that up. Sorry, no. I'm organizing a high school reunion, and I specifically said, don't post that you can't come, because quite frankly, we don't care. Like, we only want to talk about the people that are coming. I don't need to know you're taking a cruise down the Nile. Like, big deal, right? You can't make it, but we're focused on the people that are coming because this is a party, and that's who we're focused on. We're focused on the positive.
I like that. I like the value in focusing on the positive. Now I have to I could use the penalty flag card, but I think I want to make like a proper yellow flag, like a red card, a yellow card. Maybe we'll integrate that into the video. I don't know. You
can also make it you can make it your background. I've had people just save this image as their background, and they just flip it on. periodically.
Oh,
So
that requires the editor to now color grade to two different things, and he's gonna hate me. Which I don't like our editors to hate us. It is my preference to not have that. But that's oh, I'm gonna do something. Then I'm gonna have him do something. I've got a plan for this already. This is good.
okay,
Um,
great. Along with your chia pet white elephant gift
yeah.
now.
Well, one's in a video, the other one we're just not going to talk about. So what was it like being this first time inventor? You had recently and so you left GEICO, you went to a different company, and suffice to say that didn't work out, and you said, F it, I'm just gonna start my own thing to try to get my name out there. What was it like coming to the realization that not only does it need to be a board game, but there's a fair bit of expense involved in creating it?
Yeah, someone asked me the other day, would you have actually done this if you knew how much work it took up front? And, you know, I it's a hard question to answer because I just jumped in without a plan. I didn't I was like, I'm gonna make a card game. And then I needed to find a printer. And everyone's got a friend, right? And I had a bunch of people that I knew that produced different types of, worked in different print shops or have you, and they weren't necessarily card game experts. And so I realized it was cost prohibitive because they didn't really have a process down, to produce games. It was new for them too. So there was a lot of wasted time and expense, a lot of back and forth. And then I thought, well, I got to protect my idea. And then I was dealing with attorneys and they were racking up fees and all that kind of stuff. And, it definitely was time consuming. And there's that, what is it? The sunk
Sunk
fallacy of,
cost fallacy.
yeah. Like I'm in now. I got to keep swimming, I'm going to just keep going. At that point, I gotta finish it. But I just can't imagine doing anything else at this point. Like I really just can't. Like, yeah.
What's like a valuable lesson that you learned the hard way in the beginning of all of this?
Yeah. There's so many lessons. I can tell you, okay, for instance, I need like a website, and everyone's got a friend that'll make a website for you, right? But there's good web designers and not so good ones, right? Like you just got to do a little bit more homework. And just even with the producing of the game itself, I needed to do a little bit more homework in looking at different print shops and what have you, as opposed to just relying on somebody that's got a friend or somebody that I know. I mean, your network is so important, but I wouldn't always rely so heavily on, hey, I got a guy that can do this for you, right? Like, I mean, for instance, think about this. Seinfeld has this whole bit where you ask someone, hey, who's a good dentist, and they always tell you their dentist, but
Yep.
did they really research like 15 different dentists and they're like, this is the one to go to? No, it's just their guy. Like, I got my guy, this is my dentist, or this is my doctor. That's who they go to. They don't shop it around that much. Like most people don't, unless they have a terrible experience. And then they're like, oh, don't go to this dentist. They drilled a cavity that wasn't there, kind of thing. Or
Right.
they amputated the wrong arm. Okay, bad doctor, bad surgeon, right?
A
But
dentist amputating
otherwise,
arms, that is one I cannot recommend.
but but it's always like the friend, right? And so I needed to do, I think, a little bit more research on my own and like trust my own decisions, as opposed to this is a friend of a friend that I'm going to go with up front. Yeah. I
Were
wasted some
there
time doing that.
were there ever those, hey, I've got a guy, and the person that they sent you to was an absolute waste of your time?
Yes. And like assholes too. Like, I'm like, I thought you were supposed to be a friend. I'm whispering, like, no one's going to hear this, but yeah, it's like,
If we're
oh,
quiet, it adds emphasis.
right. Yes. Like,
And if
this
we're loud,
guy,
we blow out our microphones.
yeah,
Uh,
this guy's a jerk. Right. So,
Gosh,
mhm.
now I'm wondering if it's anybody that I knew. I'm sure it was some people involved, but we met because you still are involved with Catapult in Lakeland, and I was working there at the time, and it was just really interesting for me to watch you because statistically speaking, your journey of being an inventor is unique. You succeeded, which means your 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 whole thing is unique because what you did is your product, right? The product of the physical game was not the actual product.
Right? Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was it was an assistant, right? It was an assistive product to get to the final result, which was, selling your time, whether it's a speech, a class, eventually Zoom calls, that kind of
Right.
thing. And this is one of the first times that I've seen somebody go this route, right? Normally inventions, right, they have a particular design or they have a particular use, a design patent or utility patent.
Yeah.
Yours was the game is literally just a part. It's a key to the plan, man. There's a whole plan. I don't have my tinfoil hat handy, but there's a plan. And
Yeah.
you said that you went into this without a plan. I'm gonna argue that you had a plan. You just didn't know it. Like you didn't. Maybe you didn't have it on paper, right? You didn't go through the co-starters and have like the perfect business plan and all that. But you had a plan, clearly.
Yeah. I do a lot of things backwards. And I think that's part of what it maybe annoyed people in corporate America is like, I got this big fuzzy plan in here and I'm going to work my way backwards and in the middle and what have you. I was actually over the corporate plan, the local regional office, which was a multi million like $1 billion plan actually, but it was this big old document that was this thick and I had to coordinate from all the different claims, sales, service, underwriting, coordinate from all those departments and all that. So I know how a business plan is supposed to be constructed, right? And it's very logical and
And
what have
boring.
you. Yeah, it's a little dry. Yeah. Yes, I was officially the planning manager, and that was my function. But I do have a plan, right? And the plan was that I was supposed to be a paid professional speaker, and most of them have a book, right? They have a books, and a lot of them aren't even that good, these books, but that's what makes them the, so-called expert.
Well, that
And
is
that's why
how you
they're
10x your life, right? You get people to believe that what you're saying is real, and then you sell them a book that makes you
uh-huh,
10x the money you put into it. And that, my
right.
friends, is the secret. That's the
Yeah.
Grant Posner secret, not the Grant Cardone secret.
Yeah. And so I tend to swim upstream, and I thought, well, screw that. I'm not going to have a book. I'm going to have a card game. And let's think about what it is that I'm teaching them and how the card game can reinforce that. But it's got to be a fun game, but also has to be business appropriate. So that's just where it all came together. But yes, now I'm writing a book. And it's almost done as in there's 2 chapters left and most of it's already at the editor. And I've used a lot of the information, a lot of what I did on Zoom for 2 years with the card game in this book to explain why it helps people and all that. So I guess it's all part of the big fuzzy plan. Back to your point.
I like that.
Whatever.
See, the callbacks that are good, just like the callback to like and subscribe the video. That's right. Because, this is apparently the things I'm supposed to say as a YouTuber. We just passed
Oh,
4,700 subscribers. It's so weird to
oh,
me that
congratulations.
4,700 people have clicked and said, I don't hate this guy.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
um, but so you had this master plan. Now that the world is getting back to whatever normal is going to be, right? Are you seeing that old master plan of I want to get in front of a group of people and talk? Is that coming back? Or do you kind of like where you landed with the digital meetings?
It's a very good question. Okay. So I did my first in-person events. I did 2 of them in March. And the very first one I did, I was told there would be a couple of hundred people there and they wanted me to do a game show live. They're like, it's just gonna be a few hundred people. We saw you do one of those pre-recorded game shows that I told you about. All they saw was me with like blue hair and pink hair doing this game show online. They're like, just show up in Texas, be a few hundred people. So then about a month before I got there, they're like, yeah, it's like 1,000 people. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. 1,000 people. So I had to change my format here.
Yep.
Thanks for the heads up. And then when I arrived, it was this gigantic ballroom. It was like a football field. Like, this thing's huge. And they said, yeah, we opened it up for 2,000 people. So you're going to have 2,000 people here tonight? And they said, well, we already have 1,500 people that have confirmed they're definitely going to be here. And we figured there'll be a bunch of other people that might show up too. So I had to go over to the AV guys. I'm like, all right, let's huddle up here. What I wanted to do is not going to work on stage at all. So how about you put me in the middle of the room? Like, take one of those cocktail tables, put it in the middle. I'll do my little spiel on stage. I'll, get them to laugh, warm up the crowd, and then I'm just going to work the crowd from the middle of the room. And so I will throw a question up on the screen. They can talk about it at their table, and then if they think they have a funny answer, run up to the microphone in the middle of the room, and then they'd form a line. I'd tell how many people I would take, like, all right, the first 20 or the first 5 or whatever for this question, and that's what they did. So they were getting to know each other at their tables. They were laughing hysterically, and then they were running to get to the they would
imagine people in like business suits running like their lives depend on it to get to a microphone.
They were running. Oh my gosh. They were, and it was so funny. And they were throwing elbows to try to get to the microphone. And what was good about that is an introvert at their table could have this really fantastic idea, but there's no way they were going to want to, go up to the microphone to do it. So they could send the boisterous person to go running up to the microphone to represent their table with their best answer.
I'm putting together my lineup for a table at one of your talks. So I've got a linebacker, I've got a quarterback, I've got the obvious person that's way smarter than everybody else at the table, right? So I've got the linebacker to clear the way, the quarterback to run through, right? And I've got the smart person that's going to be giving the answers, right? So I'm building my ideal table here, right?
Oh yeah. Well, so I loved that format, and I loved hearing all the laughter. Like when I was on stage and I'm doing my little shtick and you got thousands of people cracking up, I'm like, this feels great, because you don't really get that. Then you don't get that virtually. I mean, I can see little squares where people are laughing, but everyone else is sort of, blacked out. So you don't even see them at all. And, I can crack a joke and it just sort of goes into the abyss. So
yeah, those of you that go to Zoom meetings and don't turn on your cameras, shame on you. And I get it, right? No one wants to put pants on, but you don't have to stand up, okay? Nobody's asking you to stand up. Right, we just want to see you so we can get an idea of, are we hitting our mark? Or are we completely missing it?
Yeah, well, so I did an online game show last, and also too, the live game shows, people pay a lot more for those, and they were picking me up in a limo and taking me to this nice suite in the hotel. So that's
fancy.
Yeah, that was super fancy. I'm like, oh, is that a limo driver with my name, on a sign?
Shut up. Like, was it at the airport?
Yes, at the airport. Yeah. Like this is fantastic. And so, that in person. And then also too, as I left the event, so many people were walking up to me at the hotel. This was at the Gaylord in Grapevine, Texas. And the thing's huge. And all these people were walking up to me, hugging me, high-fiving me. That was the most fun I've had in years. Thank you so much. I loved it. Wanting to take pictures with me and all that kind of stuff. You don't get that on Zoom.
No,
you don't
do not
at all. But packing my bag, going to the airport, wearing a mask on the airplane, like all of that's crappy. Not being able to hang out with my dog, right? Like right now I'm in jeans and a t-shirt, or I had to, dress up to get on stage. So there was a week in December where I was doing multiple game shows a day, and I was able to talk to people in Denmark and then all the way to Denver in the same day. And I would not have been able to physically transport myself because teleportation is just not around yet.
Give it time.
Yeah. So did I answer your question? That was a long answer, but that's
I'm
the
loving
pros and
this.
cons
I'm
there.
loving this.
Okay.
You have fulfilled the life goal of most people. They want to be a rock star. And what does it mean to be a rock star? To have somebody holding a placard with your name on it that is dressed up as a limo driver. That is that is the win. And I will say I have done dumb things like that when I've picked up the better 3/4 from the airport. I've dressed up in a 3-piece suit and held a box of cereal.
Ah, that's
with her
funny.
name on it. And like it was the dumbest thing. And I'm standing there stoic. And it's like 10:30 at night. I am clearly not belonging there. And I'm doing it just to be funny. She comes out and like the face palm that I saw her do made all of the work worth it. Right.
Yeah, I love it.
That it, living that rock star life, that is so cool. And I'm imagining a room full of like business professional people fighting over a microphone, and that truly means you've hit that mark. Is your plan to kind of keep doing these big in-person events? Are you still going to also be doing Zoom events? What is it? What does this future look like, do you think?
Right. I would like to do both. And,
Mm-hmm.
the week after, I was at an event that was mostly like scientist types. They were very quiet and reserved, and it was only a few hundred people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did the same thing, I came down to I left the stage, and also my jokes didn't land. Like they were laughing, but they were doing this, from the audience. Like, and I thought, all right, maybe I just need a bigger crowd of people, right? And so then I walked down to the floor and I said, all right, talk at your tables and then come up to the microphone. And like no one walked up. And I said,
That's
come
an oh shit moment.
on. I know, right? I'm like, oh, this is not gonna happen. And I said, come on, there's got to be somebody. And then one person slowly walked up, and then another one walked up. And then suddenly there was a line of like 10 people, but they calmly walked up, but their answers were absolutely hysterical because they were so smart. All the people in the room just very, all these brainiacs. And so they, had these really creative answers. And then that got the whole room laughing. It's like, oh, wow, as they were comparing notes. And so then the next question, more people came up and came up faster. Because I think also too, they saw that I wasn't going to attack them based on their answer. Like whatever people say, I go, cool. Like it's a rare day that I go, boo, that's a terrible answer. Send them away. I don't want to embarrass anyone. I want them to, feel comfortable coming up to the microphone.
Right. Yeah. But making people feel comfortable in a room is it is a talent. It is a hell of a talent. What would be some good like questions to help people break the ice? Like, the world is getting back. Some people have started new jobs that now they're required to interact with real honest to God humans. I know it's weird. I know it feels awkward. You can't have your cat or dog with you, which would that's my easy icebreaker, right? Look at my cat, right? That's like done, right? Here, let me show you some cat photos, right? Great icebreaker. But that doesn't work in a professional atmosphere. What is a great icebreaker that can help people feel part of the room rather than an individual standing alone?
All right, I'm going to give you two. If you ask someone what their biggest pet peeve is, and I know that doesn't sound like a, positive thing to talk about, but people start to crack up when they realize like, really, that little thing irritates you. So for instance, I don't like listening to air whistling through dense nose hair. I can't stand that sound, that like high pitched whistle. And I know all they got to do, they can just trim the nose hairs and it's fine. And we don't have to, we don't have to hear this kind of thing. Or like when people lick their fingers to hand me a piece of paper, like I can't stand that.
That was gross before the pandemic.
It totally was. Like, why don't your fingers work without spit? I don't understand. Like, look at this. I can pick this up. But people start to bond because they're cracking up over their little weird quirks. And it's kind of like it's a confession, right? And it's a great way to warm up even like a Zoom call before people show up. And you're pretty much also saying like, don't we hate it when people don't show up on time? But we're not saying that aloud. So like, hey, what's your biggest pet peeve? Kind of stuff.
When people book time with me and don't show up to the damn meetings.
Yeah, right. It's terrible. Ugh.
Like,
yeah, I can't stand
they have
that.
a link to book time in my calendar. They set a time and then they don't show up.
That's the worst.
The worst.
It's so it's so inconsiderate. And then for everyone on this call, my favorite question to ask people, and I ask them in every single game show that I do, and I've heard over 1,000 answers, is what should have been invented by now? And usually people, it's really good for this group.
That's
for sure.
a great question for this group.
but you got to avoid the obvious answers, because someone will always say time travel, teleportation. They want food that won't make them fat. They want alcohol that won't give them a hangover. They want disappearing dog poop. They want to cure cancer. And I'm like, hey, I'm looking for like a funnier answer, right? So as a facilitator, I'll say, please don't say these answers. Let's come up with something else. And so then the next round is, well, I want teenagers that don't talk back, or I want a bed that makes itself. You kind of hear these things. So these are if someone were wanted to make a lot of money, just to ask this question, you start hearing all the pain points that people have and all the customers that you would have if you were able to solve these issues. But then it starts to get creative. So like the other day, someone said to me, I want a wedgie remover that I could use at the office, and then no one knows that I'm picking my wedgie. I'm like, all right, that's a good one. But it's just an ongoing question. You could ask that question every single morning, because then people would come back the next day with another invention. My husband does that with me all the time. Do you have one off the top of your head okay, let's hear it. What do you have?
So, I live in Florida, as most people know by now, and it is a swamp here. And the thing that I hate is that shoes don't have adequate ventilation. And what does that mean? It's a swamp in your foot. And what happens when your feet are wet? One, they get all like mushy and stuff, and no one likes that, but you get the stink. And after a while, there is not a damn thing that you can do. Your most favorite shoes are going to smell.
Right.
There, and like you can do the freezer trick, you can try the spray, you can cover the thing in mountains of baking soda. There is nothing that is going to stop it. That.
Do you want air conditioned shoes? Are you looking at air conditioned shoes?
I don't know. I think that would feel weird, right?
I think it'd feel amazing. Are you kidding?
Maybe.
My husband wants air conditioned underwear.
Oh, I can agree with that, but there is a solution for that. It's called a cool shirt, but you can make boxer briefs out of them. Not that I would know these things.
You should. Are you going to try? Are you wearing them now?
No, I'm not. Oh God, you need like a pump and a reservoir tank. Race car drivers do this. It's a thing. Like they have full suits that are full of coolant tubing.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of hard to walk around with something like that, though.
Well, it's plumbed into the car's air conditioning system.
I see.
The car itself does not have air conditioning. It only serves to keep their suit cool. If the car gets to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, but your skin temp is still 98.6 or whatever it needs to be, you're comfy as a clam. Right? This kind of thing exists. But yeah, for me, it is a way to deal with the fact that everybody has foot odor at some point, and that pair of shoes that you love, you can get them resold as many times as you want. The smell never goes away.
Yeah,
that's something
it
that
does sound like you need. So it's yeah, and I've even tried like the charcoal inserts and that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's a good one.
But I do weird product development stuff, so like 95% of my own problems I can just solve with 3D printing.
Like but you can't solve the swamp foot issue.
I'm sure I could, but I don't possess the skills to do it alone. Which is
because it's also not a sock, right? Because some shoes you're not going to wear socks with.
Technically, I don't have any that I don't wear socks with, but yes, technically.
Yeah, I've never been able to wear like closed-toed shoes without socks. I don't know how people do that. I see people do that a lot.
Yeah, like Sperry's.
How are you doing that?
That's just, and they're like leather on the inside. It's absorbing your sweat, and it's weird. Right? That's what a sock is for. It is the intermediary, right? And if you're a sweaty person, sweaty people exist. I'm not particularly a sweaty person, and that does upset some people around me that are. But it's still a problem. And I'm sure if you have particularly sweaty feet, this is an issue. But even further, we look at the military. We look at trades workers who need big steel toe boots that by nature are waterproof. Therefore, they don't have any, cooling or any way to air themselves out. So you get boot dryers.
Right.
There's got to be a better way.
Yeah, there does.
There's got to be a better way. We are on our feet constantly, and we're now starting to realize the value of a good fitting shoe, a proper orthotic, right? my brother buys Brooks sneakers. They're expensive. They're like $100+ for sneakers. I am still on the entrepreneur budget, so I can't afford that stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I look at how can I maybe 3D print something or something like that. I know for me personally, the big problem that I solved was that cane handles really suck. I'm cane bound at this point. We're hopefully soon getting to a point where I don't need it, but for the past couple of years, I need to use a cane to walk around. Cane handles really suck. And on our live stream here about a year ago, I actually designed my own cane handle live
Oh, that's exciting.
and then open sourced it so that anybody that wants something that's more comfortable, that fits their hand like a glove, could do that. And like that's my industry literally serves to solve those problems because we can do those one-off things. And now like I'm racking in my brain, all right, so how do we add cooling with and literally like, do I have a radial fan laying around? I do. Of course I do. How do I add one of these radial fans to push air into a shoe that can then come out via air channels? Because if you can keep the foot cool, you can keep it dry. And it's so many other things, right? Just
Right. And maybe like they could have nanobots that are these little tiny fans that are inside the lining of
oh
the
gosh,
shoe.
if only. Yep. Yeah, that to me would be a product, but I also believe that there are tons of different ways to go about building something. And someone might say, well, if you just do this, it works better. I love the
Right.
Occam's razor ideas, right?
Well, maybe it could be a lotion that goes on the feet and then it dries and then it does something. So it reacts to the feet when they start to heat up.
Something that's like because it's bacteria that make the smell. So
Yeah.
maybe it's like an antibacterial. Because I've seen people put deodorant on their feet, like an antiperspirant, to physically keep
Mhm.
them from sweating. But I can't imagine that's very good.
I wonder right now how many people are thinking about their feet and their feet are starting to sweat just because they're thinking about this conversation.
Yeah. Ostrike says that's a good point. Why doesn't every home have boot dryers? Allison Ford says microbial stuff. Oh, microbial.
Microbial.
There it is.
Yeah.
I have business degrees, all right? English wasn't some of those classes I took, microbial stuff. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it could be. And Jimmy still stands on the point that he wants alcohol. It doesn't make him drunk. He also says that he would go to the mic. He would not be comfortable no matter how supportive you would be, Deedre. But Jimmy's a good guy. I've talked with him plenty of times. He's actually a patron of ours, so he gets access to the super secret Discord server where we all hang out and just talk about random things just because, and he gets to see all the products that I'm working on behind the scenes. Because
Does he have another
Hmm?
does he have another invention? What is he working on?
Oh, I don't what is Jimmy working on?
Yeah, what are you working on, Jimmy?
Yeah, tell us, what do you guys in the comments, we've got a few people hanging out here. What are you all working on and how are you solving those weird problems? We'd love to know. But it is product development is not easy. What were some of like the mistakes that you made in product dev? Like other than trusting the wrong people, right? Everyone's made that mistake once or twice, but what are some of those weird like mistakes you made in this product development journey?
Well, I named the card game. I'm not going to say what it is, but I named the card game something that already existed. However, in my searches, it didn't show up. And when I was working on protecting like the name of the card game, that's when I discovered somebody else. We're talking like 2 months before I filled out the paperwork, submitted that name of the game. And it turns out they have not moved forward with it. And it's just sort of sat there like their application. And so I could have waited it out, but I didn't want to wait a year, right, to see if they're going to file it. Like I needed to move forward. So I had to change the name. And I don't really know how I could have prevented that mistake other than to maybe hire someone to do deeper research, because my Google searches and Amazon and all that, it wasn't there. It was just in product development.
Can you share the name prior with us? Do you remember
it? Yeah. So I want, gosh, what was it? I think I cannot remember. do you ever put something out of your brain? Like it was just one of those, well, shit, I got to move on
Yep,
and
it's gone.
I'm just going to forget it and move on.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it was like the conversation game or something, but yeah.
So Jimmy says, Grant, you know what I'm working on. I do know what Jimmy's working on. I don't know if he wants me to talk about it, but I'm just gonna do it. His kid has a favorite toy, and Jimmy is working on continually trying to keep it from breaking. Because it gets abused, right? And it's the kid's favorite toy. And he was, doing soldering
What is it?
work, and it's a fire truck.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a fire truck. But yeah, but that's the last thing that I knew that Jimmy was working on. Maybe there's something else that I forget, but in my personal defense, I am too damn busy to remember everything all the time. I'm sorry, Jimmy. Allison says, not boards to teach kids how to tie certain knots. Yes, that is a phenomenal thing. Something that I can say the Cub Scouts, I never got into Boy Scouts, but that I learned in the Cub Scouts was to, tie a basic knot, be able to take two things and tie them together in ways in which you may not ever be able to take them apart, but they will not come apart either. That has been incredibly valuable. I've pulled cars out of ditches doing that with tie down straps because they're so far, I don't have a chain long enough, and so many ways that those kind of things have come up and been, taught properly. He said that is the latest thing he's told me about. So, all right, I do have a decent memory. Ostrike says,
I think we need.
Hmm?
No, go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
It's a completely different subject, so.
That's okay.
Okay.
Quite all right.
Ostrike said, do you think your name got leaked somehow and they're just speculators?
That's possible.
That's something that like every inventor always worries about. Like, oh, what if this gets out? What if this gets out? I said, look, don't worry about it getting out. It doesn't matter. You care that you can make something profitable. I don't care what the name is, right? 3D Musketeers, as of late or early last year, we were looking at rebranding the entire company to a completely different name. And then we just ultimately decided we kind of like the name. It's a tough brand because of, the candy, the movie, the book, because it's 3 Musketeers rather than 3D Musketeers. But it's hilarious when you think about what we do.
Yeah.
And so many people get stuck
name.
on those things. It's been a tough name to brand. I think it's a good name. The podcast name, Making Awesome Podcast. Terrible podcast name. Because if you search Making Awesome Podcast, you find videos and articles on how to make an awesome podcast. You don't find this. So I tell people to search for 3D Musketeers, which they'll find. Because, of course, this podcast and all the other episodes of this podcast are supported and directly funded by 3D Musketeers. If you want to get your ideas made real, you can do so at 3dmusketeers.com. I have to get good at, like, integrating the sponsor things. It's just fun. It's just fun.
Well, good job.
So what would be a tip for a new inventor from your perspective of coming up with this game?
Creation is messy and it's embarrassing. And I think that the biggest thing you can do is just jump in and start tinkering around. And I also think it's important to find other people that have done the same thing and to ask them for some advice. Like, I didn't know any game inventors and I just sort of fiddled around in the dark. And because of that, it took me a long time. And I didn't want to go on Kickstarter and just put my idea out there for a bunch of random people to devour and possibly copy, back to your point.
Yep.
I thought, okay, I'm just going to figure this out. And that's what I did. And so that's very satisfying, but it was also very time consuming. I made a lot of mistakes.
How many months or years did you have from first ideation to finished product?
11 months.
That's not bad. That's really quick.
Is it?
Oh my God, that's quick.
I feel like I could have done it. So you're talking from, all right. So I had I launched my company December 13th, 2018. And then I pretty much took a month where I slept Okay. I was so exhausted from 20 years of corporate America where I was constantly answering emails and texts like 24, it felt like 24 hours a day. I mean, it
It
wasn't, I
kind of
did
is.
sleep, but it was just constant. Like I'd roll out of bed and start answering emails. I go to night, go to sleep at night. I'm answering emails. It was just like constantly on this electronic leash and I couldn't enjoy, time off and all that kind of stuff. So there I was pretty much unemployed, right? Like here it is, it's December and every day I would do one thing to advance my business, whether it was, okay, what's the name of my company and like, what's the logo going to be? And, that kind of thing. I would do one thing and then I just go back to sleep because I was so freaking exhausted. And then February is when I really started to work on the game and like testing it out on people. I would invite folks over to my house for brunch or lunch or cocktails or something. And I was like, hey, I got this like game idea. And I printed it on business card stock. And we would just sort of mess around with it that way. And then I, produced some copies with a company that was a print shop that wasn't actually a card producer and started messing around with that. And then, produced the actual game. And we had the physical games in December of 2019.
Which is basically right when I met you.
Yeah.
Because I started there December of 2019. So that would have
Okay.
been exactly
There
when
you
we
go.
met. Yeah, that's actually a really short process. And even then you still made, some little errors along the way. What does the future look like, do you think? Are you going to be producing a next iteration, upgrade packs? Because I've always looked at this and said, this is basically Cards Against Humanity for people that can't cuss when they're playing, right? I've
I mean, you
always
can
thought
cuss. I've
this.
heard people do it. I've heard people, okay, so I do have a after dark edition that I've already made. I just haven't actually produced and it's very naughty. And I've tried and so I tested that out actually on Zoom with lots of different groups of people. So it's ready to roll. But I don't want that to be my my brand just yet. So I do have like a Florida edition.
Oh gosh, the Florida edition.
And
How many
yeah,
Florida
yeah.
Man
So,
cards existed in there?
yeah, yeah. I have this. All right. So this is a tiny, tiny little one. See
I
this?
like that, yeah.
So what I did is I made a tiny game for Halloween and I mailed this to just a bunch of random people I didn't know at all. And I was like, happy Halloween. Here's a little game you can play at your Halloween parties. And when I put that together, I thought COVID would be over. And this was in 2020. And so I just produced these, mailed them to people in little envelopes with, by the way, I do, corporate parties. So if COVID's still around, hire me for your, like your end of the year virtual party kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
this was a promo and people loved this. And I wound up selling like 450 of the purple games
Wow.
to to a business that wanted to give them to their employees. So yes, that was the long answer to your question. Yes, there are multiple versions of the game.
You went old school direct mail campaign, huh?
I did. Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
choose like some zip codes? Or did you literally just start writing random addresses and sending them?
What I did is I went onto LinkedIn and I found people who run conferences at different associations because I know they are gathering people together. And that's who I sent these cards to. But what sucked was how many people were still working from home who didn't actually get this until they stopped by the office. We're talking months later. We're talking the next year, 2021, they showed up and there's this mountain of mail on their desk. They didn't get it in time, but one lady did and ordered a bunch of games. So
That's
that
awesome.
worked. Yeah.
Allison Ford is asking, do other countries play? She's guessing the British would give incredibly different answers. She's in the UK.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I mean, great question. So, there was a group of people in Denmark who actually had a couple of British employees and they played it. And the British players liked it quite a bit. And so what was her name? Did you say
Allison
her? What
Ford.
was Allison? Okay, so Allison, I realized that I needed to look up some of the questions that I had, for instance, didn't make sense. So around the holidays, I was asking people what would be unusual to find stuffed in a turkey during Thanksgiving. And so then people would have these, really funny answers. And I was like, and don't get hung up on like the size of a turkey. So it could be a Ford F-150 truck. Like what is in the turkey? And so people were coming up with these really bizarre answers. But then when I played with that group, from Copenhagen, I realized that, they don't have Thanksgiving. I mean, they're not going to, they probably don't even eat turkey. So I did a little research and I realized, okay, most cultures have pudding or a different type of pudding. So obviously in the UK, they have, the Christmas pudding, but other cultures have, maybe it's rice pudding or, it's a bread pudding or what have you. So I just said, what would be unusual to find stuffed inside a pudding during a celebratory event?
God,
And
I
they
can't
all
imagine
had,
the question or the answers to this.
oh yeah, they had some really funny answers.
What was the
So
best
I
one?
just, oh shoot. One person said their mother-in-law. Like it would be very odd to find my mother-in-law in there. One person was like the car keys. Someone said like a hangnail, which is someone said a used condom. That's so disgusting.
I
Yeah.
was at a gift exchange uh years ago, and someone opened up a bag and pulled out a car key. And the rest of us are like, we had a $20 limit. And that's when the person that had the bag realized they accidentally put their car keys in the bag, and it was hilarity ensued. Right? This person's like,
Great.
I have a car. And so they're lucky, like, wait, that's your car. They're like, yes, that's my car. Can I have my keys back, please? They didn't realize their keys had fallen into the bag.
Oh, it's fantastic.
So I've actually seen instances where car keys ended up in a place they didn't necessarily belong. And the girlfriend being a nurse, I'm sure she can talk about things ending up where they don't belong. But
Sure. Yeah. And then don't swingers have those key parties where they're putting their keys in a bowl? Do you know what I'm talking
I
about?
did swing dancing, okay? None of the other stuff. Sorry, I don't have any
I mean,
answers for that one.
for the record, I'm not a swinger, but I have wound up into some really awkward situations where I didn't know
It is Florida.
the people around me were swingers. Yeah.
It is Florida. Yep, that's a thing here in Florida.
Just yeah, just so you know, the pineapple is the symbol for swingers. I always thought it was hospitality, but I guess it's very hospitable to be a swinger. I guess it's very giving or something. But I was wearing a shirt with some pineapples on it at a neighborhood bar and grill when I was traveling for GEICO. This was in Anaheim, California. So this wasn't even Florida. This Anaheim, California. And I'm traveling by myself. And of course, eating a dinner alone at like a table for four is very awkward. So I was sitting at the bar and they were having swingers night, but I didn't know this. And there's not like there's signage. It was just something that they all knew. And so people were coming over and trying to pick me up. And I was staying at the hotel next door. They're like, where are you staying? I'm like, I'm not supposed to tell strangers. This is kind of weird. And they're like, are you at the hotel? And then the bartender, like he realized like I wasn't part of it all and he had to break it to me. He's like, and by the way, you're wearing pineapples. You have pineapples on your shirt. I'm like, I thought this was cute. I don't even normally wear stuff with a lot of patterns. Like, what are the odds that I would wear a pineapple shirt to a swingers event? Yeah.
Allison says it's a thing in Britain too. Jimmy says flamingos in the yard is a symbol. So Jimmy's in Sweden. I hope I'm right. I'm pretty certain it's Sweden. Flamingos in the yard are just a Florida thing. That's
Yeah.
God, I hope it's not. God, I got some weird neighbors if that's the case.
And hold on. So that is my so the trophy card in the game. If you're the most interesting player, check it out. It's got a flamingo on it. And
wait, we can look at that as the most interesting player.
The player. Yeah.
I love that. That's great. See, it's the things you learn from people that are like literally. There's multiple countries watching this right now, and
well, apparently, gold sneakers mean swingers too, like the shiny gold sneakers. That's what the
I don't.
A lot of the
those, so that's a plus.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, the glitter. So the villages, and for the people that aren't from Florida, there's this huge community of retirees, and there's quite a lot of action, I guess, that goes on there, and
It
that's
is
how
the
they
highest
they
concentration of
know,
STDs in the nation.
right?
That
Yeah.
one
They're
zip
like,
code for the villages is the highest concentration of STDs in the nation.
right. They're like, we're on death's door. Who cares? Little herpes, you know. So, but they anyway, so they let let everyone know with their gold sneakers.
I was out at the villages meeting someone here in the industry. His name is Shane. He recently moved out, and I kid you not, I look over and his neighbor is watering his plants in his tidy whities, just nothing else, just tidy whities. I'm like,
That might be dementia. I mean, they are older.
it wasn't that, he was not that old. Okay, he wasn't young, wasn't that old. Um, I don't. I'm like, is this what this? He like, yeah, just don't worry about it. I'm like, okay, all right. You know, I forget that it is the villages.
Yeah.
Um, getting back on this subject, uh, um, how have you been seeing the transition occur now that you're getting more in-person gigs? Are you looking at how you can modify the game to fit those in-person gigs more effectively?
Well, after spending 2 years doing this online, I was able to, I would say, workshop different card questions that I was able to figure out were more popular than others,
Mm-hmm.
for that reason. But the game itself, like the structure of the game, I got that down. It doesn't matter how many people are there, if it's going to be, an intimate gathering, or if there's going to be thousands of people. Like I know how to manage that now, like even how to get 1,000 people to stop talking at the same time. I have a method to get them all to stop
Shut the
talking
F
like
up!
that. I have a yodeling pickle. It's a plastic dill pickle that yodels. But so what I tell them, like the little shtick is like I say, all right, I brought my favorite toy and I'm going to use it on stage. And when I start to use it, I want everyone to join in with me. And then I hold it up for a second and everyone's like, what is she holding? And then I hit the button and it yodels. And so then I'm like, all right, everyone's going to yodel. And so they all sing with it. And then everyone stops talking and we go from there.
I dig
But
it.
that's great crowd control, that pickle.
Crowd control is important when you're doing a big gig like that. Have there ever been, a speaking gig that you've been to where the crowd control was just, it wasn't happening?
No, that has not. I haven't been anywhere where it's really rowdy, right? Because typically the people I'm working with are professionals, but they are drinking sometimes, right? Like they're
Mm-hmm.
drinking and people don't pay attention, for that matter. But they want to see the next question and they also want to hear other people's answers. So they do tighten it up, you know. I think because I also like say up front, hey, listen, you're going to need to stop talking at the same time. So let's just be aware of that. Like, let's all commit to talking and then stop talking at the same time. Like, let's all agree this is how we're going to do this. And getting that buy-in up front helps quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you talked earlier about being an introvert and, that while you can put on the persona, throw on the bright colored wig and ham it up on stage, what is it like when you're done? Right? When the show's over, the applause are happening, what's going through your mind?
I'm starving. I'm so hungry. And it's so true. Like I want food. I just want to like shove it all in my mouth and I don't want to have to talk to anyone right then. But yeah, that's the first thing I'm thinking about is like, I'm so hungry.
I like your honest answers. I was expecting like, oh, okay, I did it. I'm proud of myself. No, you're like, F this. Where's the food?
Where, yes. Yes.
I make a personal thing. It seems like you're kind of the same way. I will not eat before an event
Oh yeah,
because
me either.
that is exactly when you get food on yourself and when you don't have a change of clothes.
Right. Well, and also it'll make me sluggish. And so I have all of this adrenaline going and I really want to focus on everyone. And the last thing I want is also, I don't want to have some sort of like sudden anal explosive discharge while I'm on stage
Definitely don't want that.
because
No, don't want
right. Like if someone's giving you a greasy piece of pizza to eat before you go on stage and who knows, like you just don't want to combine that with nerves
that. Nope.
as well. Yeah.
I'm glad I'm the same way. I've learned that I am the most messy eater when I have to go do something important. Um, but when you have to go do those important things, you never really have the time to deal with it because you're not planning for that. Is there anything that you plan for that you find to be the most valuable when you're looking at running a room full of people?
Mm, I want to know who the audience is because I tailor the content for them. Now, there are certain questions that I know are always going to be successful, like what should have been invented by now? That's my signature question. I'm always going to ask that. But for instance, if there's a sponsor, there's certain information I need to weave into the game to make the sponsor happy. But I also want to use topics that I know they will appreciate. So, for instance, last week I did a virtual game show for the National Notary Association, and it wasn't the notaries, but it was the like employees of the association.
Okay.
And so, one of the questions I created for them was, "What would be exceptionally awkward or funny to have notarized?" And that's their world, right? And so then they're like, and they were coming up with some really funny answers. But what I thought was interesting is they had never considered that before, and this is their whole world, and they never had that discussion before amongst themselves of, hey, wouldn't it be funny to get like a notary, a
Yeah.
notary tattoo, or
I'm
oh,
curious to see what the best answer for this was.
and then they were sharing information with me too. Apparently, there was a guy who there was some sort of ID. And I want to say it was like a driver's license, and he signed it with like a paw print or whatever. And so then when he bought a home, he had to sign it with paw prints on every single. Have
Because
you heard about this? Because
well, I know it
I
has to
had never heard.
match. The big thing is
Yeah, it
matching.
had to match perfectly. And so he had to put little paw prints on, all of his official documents because he made this joke on, and no one picked up on it on his driver's license.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thankfully I don't do dumb things like that. Thankfully, I've done dumb things, but not like that. Okay. I God, it so much so much good information here. What would be some advice that you could give to people that want to get started in whether it's a game development, like a physical game development, or being an inventor in general? Like what would be some good advice?
Well, first off, the fact that someone wants to invent something, how cool is that, right? So many people don't even try. They don't even think about it. I know this for a fact because I ask what should have been invented by now, and people sort of pause, like, oh, I never even thought about this before. Like they're just going through life, not noticing that everything around them can be improved. I don't care what it is. It can be improved. And that's what you are. If you're an inventor, you're trying to make the world a better place. And how cool is that, right? Like, even if you just have a whole bunch of shit that you put together that never actually turns into anything. And you think about, like, Back to the Future, and Doc had all of those absurd, inventions, some of which didn't work or whatever. I always just thought that was so cool that he would create,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just to even make something. I think, you should just congratulate yourself that you even want to try. So that's the first thing. So I would say give yourself some grace that that it's going to be a messy process, that the first thing that you create probably isn't going to be that good, that there might be things that you make that society is not ready for yet. So don't base your invention on success as far as are other people really going to be into it, because they might not be, or maybe it's just too soon, right? So take that invention after you perfected it, however you want, put it off to the side, and then go make something else and keep making something, keep creating. That makes you a more interesting person too. And your time will come. That item will be needed later. And don't get stuck up on like, it has to be this way. Keep improving it. Everything can be improved.
Literally, that's the advice that we give to any inventor that comes to us. I say, congratulations, you made it past the first step. You reached out.
Yeah.
You realize that you can't do this alone. The next step is that you need to realize that your baby might be ugly. And I'm here to help you make it look a little bit less ugly. And you have to relinquish that control. Like when a new set of parents get their first babysitter, right? It's the most stressful thing in the world because they don't know who this person is. They have to vet them, and they're going to be leaving their child with this person and entrusting the life of their child with this person. Like I say, the
Yeah,
inventing process is like starting a family.
it
And yet
is.
you're going to now entrust some stranger with your product. And
Yeah.
it's kind of weird, right?
I think also too, it's hard for people to accept feedback, right? Because there's some people you need their opinions, and
Yep.
then there's other people that you don't like. Who cares what they think at all? Like it doesn't matter. But you have to know whose opinion has value and whose opinion is this total shit. Like who cares that they think you should change the color or the font or whatever. Um,
When you
you
did,
know what I'm saying? Like
oh,
it's
yeah.
hard to figure out like whose feedback matters, because you can keep changing something because everyone keeps telling you to, and you're going to turn up, you're going to create like a really crappy project, like product, because you try to appease everybody, and that's not good.
A lot of people want to go to their families and friends. And I say, nope, do
Oh, they're
not.
the
They
worst.
are the
Yeah.
worst. Unless you've got that one family member who plays devil's advocate really, really well. Hi, I'm that family member in my family, and they hate asking me those questions because I'm going to give them the honest answer, not the answer they want to hear. But you got to go out in public. You got to ask people that don't know you. And
Yeah.
the trick I've always given people, it's a bit of manipulation and a bit of social engineering, but it works. It is routine these days that adults are going back to college. It's a lot easier if you have a kid because you can say it's for my kid's class project and bring the kid with you. But if not, you say, hey, I'm back in college. I'm getting my MBA. We had to build a product to do a business plan. And I decided I'm just going to go for it. This is what I've made. I'd love to get your opinion on it. Ask randos. Go to a shopping mall. Yeah, those things still exist. You can try Walmart, but they kick people out a lot faster these days. But find a place where people congregate. Um, if you are part of a church or a religious group, make sure that they don't know you. If you're well known there, like you speak often or something like that, bad news. Don't use it. But if you're just a member in a mega church, beyond my thoughts about all of that. But if you're a member of one of those, that's a great place to ask. They're all there for one reason. So, talk to them. Talk to your neighbors. Um, that's where I find the most value of people that you don't know that are going to give you that honest feedback that you might need to hear.
Yeah, and even asking a friend of yours to take your product and ask other people and maybe get the recordings or what have you. It's almost like a little focus group, because even then people don't want to hurt your feelings if they know you're the one that created it. Granted, like my family doesn't really care about my feelings. So, for instance, my sister said, I hate games like this. I hate games. I mean, I would never play a game like this. Like, that's a dumb idea, kind of thing. And my mom's not really into it. And if I ever try to bring up some of these questions, like at dinner, they all kind of smirk and look at each other. So I don't, I don't even try with them at all.
Yeah, product development does require a certain set of skills. And I would say that you possess a lot of those that the average person doesn't, right? You were willing to look at your project and say that this may not be perfect. You were willing, when you realized you had to change the name, you didn't just toss the entire thing out the window. Or maybe you did, but you went back and grabbed it, right? You went back and retrieved it. You've made a lot of the decisions that I constantly yell at inventors for not making.
Hmm.
The people that want a product that serves a very, 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 very niche market and is so incredibly expensive that they've priced themselves out of a market are that are unwilling to remove some of their features are not people that are going to succeed. And if they do, I'll eat the humble pie all day long, right? I'm happy to eat the humble pie. That means I've been proven wrong. Where were those steps that you were proven wrong, where you thought you were doing something right, and very clearly you weren't?
Okay. So the game is 5 different games in one. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, instead of just letting people play it, in a relaxed manner, wouldn't it be better if they're competing to be the most interesting person? And so therefore we need to have points that they win or lose in each round. But with 5 different games within a game, the points are calculated in a different way. And that becomes, there's a lot of people that just can't math, right? They just can't do it. And they certainly don't want to do it after a few drinks or what have you. And the feedback I started receiving from people was, this is just too complicated. I'm like, what's complicated about adding and subtracting 50 points or 250 points? Like, come on already. You can do that. It's fine. But they just couldn't do it. So instead of getting rid of the points in that situation, what I did is I had a interactive scorecard created, and it has like fart sounds in it. I mean, I spent a whole day listening to different farts. I was like, too bubbly, too squeaky, too long, too, too realistic, kind of thing. But how do you spend your Saturdays?
Now,
Right?
what did you do on your Saturday? Well, I spent the entire day listening to fart noises.
I did. I listened to fart sounds. I'm like, that's not the right fart for this.
Are you a 13-year-old boy? This is weird.
I might be. So anyway, like I didn't want to give up on the points, but I thought, okay, the friction issue here is they need an easy way to add and subtract these numbers. And I need to also make it fun for them. So that's what I'm going to create for them. And there you go. I don't even know if everyone's using it, but then I thought, like, oh, then maybe I can capture their email and then I can send them like a dancing flamingo trophy, and then maybe they'll post it on social media and all that kind of stuff. So it's a fairly new thing that's been created, and I don't know how successful it is just yet, but that's me not trying to give up on the point system, which might just be one big massive mistake. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, Allison said also those that can't give up on an idea, even when it's obvious to others it's not working. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is, that is probably the hardest thing, to realize that the idea is not going to work. And I don't know if you fit into this category, but I will vastly categorize makers in that if you don't have ADHD, you're not a maker. Like statistically speaking, every maker that I've spent time around or hung out with, ADHD to the nines, right? I have 6 different products that I'm working on personally, and I don't think I've touched any of them in 2 months because I'm so busy. And eventually I'll get to it. Do you find yourself doing the same thing? We have all these different ideas.
So Grant, I got tested August of last year. I because I thought as I was writing this book, I thought, what if something's, I'm going to put in air quotes, what if something's wrong with me? Right? Like my whole life, people were making comments about my ideas, the way my brain worked. Some people liked it, some didn't. I had teachers that thought I was brilliant. I had other teachers that thought I was an absolute idiot, and they would try to move me into, these special courses. And then that those teachers would, like walk me back and say, no, she doesn't need to be in here. And then other teachers like, I don't want to deal with her, kind of stuff. Like I was this problem for some people, and a sort of a blessing and a curse. Right. So I got tested, and it turns out I do have ADHD, and I have the moderate level. And here I am almost 50 years old, and I've lived with it my entire life, untreated, no medication. And I've just been dealing with it this whole time. So I find it wonderful that you just said, hey, all creators and inventors pretty much have this. And so it is a superpower, and it's also a curse, but it's nice to know there's nothing wrong with me.
I can paint with a broad brush because I know my target market really, really well. The vast majority of makers are if they don't know they have it, it is undiagnosed. And there are a few that are like, the one shot, one kill kind of makers, right? They do one project and they get it all the way through. They're done. They move on to the next one. But the vast majority of us have a graveyard of unfinished projects that we are unwilling to discuss because that's just the way that life goes. Did you find yourself ever with a bunch of unfinished projects?
So when I worked in corporate America, I had 800 corporate clients. They all had multiple events a year. I had a team of people that worked for me, and a lot of them were very organized and they would get it done. So I would push out these ideas like, oh, we should do this, 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 and this. And because
Hmm.
there were so many clients reaching out to us, I didn't have a chance to be bored. But I think other people wouldn't have managed well in that environment because it's too much going on. But for me, it was like a ton of projects going on, but I had people that could take it across the finish line for me.
Hmm.
So then I could just check up on them really quick, throw out a couple of other ideas, da da da, da, and then it was like run over to someone else and like work with them. And then they got it done. Right. So we were a team, and that's what made it work. And what sucks now is I'm all alone and I don't have those people that can push it over the net. So now I do have these projects that are taking longer than I would like because I don't have those people to, was it like a plate on the little stick, they keep it going when I
Hmm.
jump over to the next project. Yeah. I really I miss my team so badly. I really do.
I feel that. I feel that so much has changed for us. Our team isn't it's not as local as it used to be anymore, and they all
Mhm.
get busy with school and jobs, and yeah, I feel
Yeah.
that. Allison says, I wouldn't be me and know what to do with myself if I didn't have loads of work in progress projects.
Yeah.
What is
Yeah. I
a future project you can talk to us about?
Okay, so this book is coming out this year called How to Be More Interesting Than a Cell Phone, which is also the name of my keynote,
Hmm.
as well in the course that I have. And in that book, there you go. There you go. That's right. All right. So, yes. So then the book, and then after the book will be an online course that goes with the book for all the people that don't want to read everything that I wrote. And Grant, you were part of an idea I had. It was a story spike wheel, and it was you helped the
I
student. Yeah,
wasn't
you're
going to
nodding.
mention it. I didn't know if you wanted to mention it or not, but
Oh
yes,
no,
we.
no, I no, no. I'll talk about it. So originally, I had this idea in my head that okay, I'm going to help people come up with creative ideas and the way and like build stories. And instead of, you think about like Mad Libs. Mad Libs gives you a story, but you have to come up with like the verb or the adjective, when
Hmm.
with the story. So it's sort of the reverse of that. And what I did is I came up with interesting verbs and interesting nouns and what have you. And and like certain numbers and locations and all that kind of stuff, and put them on these different wheels that when you stack up, kind of like a pyramid, you then turn them. And then when they align, you then need to build a story or a poem or like a song
Hmm.
off of this group, right? So I hired this student from Florida Poly. His name's Orion Mendez to build it for me. And
I
he
got to
was
know
the
Orion.
so-called, yeah, so he was the so-called 3D printer expert kind of thing. So he took my idea, turned it into like what's that? Is it called a pattern? Like what's it called? Like this is what this is the
A CAD file. Yeah, he made
a
a
CAD
CAD
file,
file.
right. So he makes a CAD file,
Hmm.
and I buy all these spools of plastic. I'm like, oh, let's do glitter and let's do glow in the dark, and I was all excited. I'm like, let's go shopping. So I buy all this stuff and send it to his apartment, and every week I'm like, hey, how's it going? He's like, oh, it's coming. I'm like, no, seriously, like you gotta like put it together. Like you have it, you have the printer, you got all the plastic, nothing should be holding you up. And he wound up at Grant's place at like
It was
midnight the
very
day that
late.
he was yes, the day that he was supposed to bring it to me, and he couldn't make it work. And so he decided to burn it into wood, right?
Yep. We
Burn it
laser
into
cut it
wood.
while he was here.
Yeah. Yeah, because he had pushed it off and pushed the date back and all that kind of stuff. And so he shows up at my house. I think it was midnight. So I was definitely late for you. And he
Yeah.
didn't realize that I knew you. He's like, well, I found this guy and we're going to laser cut it. And I was like, well, who is it? And he tells me, I'm like, I know him. I think I could text him right now. Like you I
I we
could have done this a while ago.
Well, I had told you previously. So like when I realized it was for you, I said, "Hey, thanks for being a customer." You're like, "Huh?" I'm I'm like, yeah, I'm working with this guy. She's like, oh, all right, let's not tell him. And then she said, just, you were like, just tell me how it goes. And I think I was live texting you as part of it. I'm like, this is not going great. No offense, it
Yeah,
ain't going
yeah.
great.
So anyway, but all right. So since Orion's not here to defend himself, so yes, it didn't work out as a 3D printed
No,
model
it was
for
too thin.
several, right, and then it didn't really work out as the laser cut wood discs, and I have them all actually in the little metal thing behind me. I could probably pull it out. They all smelled like burnt wood when he showed up,
Yep.
and it just wasn't going to work either. So to Orion's credit, what he did is he turned it into a video game.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I have a QR code in the back of the book, and you can now we have a little augmented reality component,
Oh,
and so
fancy.
and so you can play it on your phone. And quite frankly, I think that's better than the 3D model, because now everyone will be able to do it. They'll be able to do it on their phone, whereas other people would need it to have access to a 3D printer and to play around with this toy and all that kind of stuff. So now he came up with a solution after a lot of scrambling and, back and forth. And I'm cool with it. I think it's great. And yeah.
That is ultimately where that project needed to end up, like from my perspective. So the reason that it wasn't printable and I'll go into it for the viewers, it wasn't printable because he put text on it, and the text was so tiny that the nozzle diameter, 3D printer nozzles are 0.4 millimeters in diameter, about 4 hairs thick, really thin. But text font can get even thinner, right?
Yeah.
Like, I cannot 3D print my business card with all the information that's on it. I can't do it. It will not work on a 3D printer. And no matter how big we blew up the letters, we could not get it to a point where a 3D printer could adequately extrude it and make it look pretty. So I said, all right, screw this. We're going to the laser. Send me your CAD files. I'll instantly generate a laser cuttable file. I'll turn on the laser. It'll take 10 minutes. That's the other benefit of the laser. It was like lightning fast. And I remember because we had just set up our standing set, because that was the first time I ever like put some of the lights on my standing set for YouTube, because he was taking pictures on the standing set. I remember this because he brought his camera with him to take pictures of everything. And the laser worked, but yeah, it's not easily shippable. It stinks, and if you don't clean it, that the char from burning the wood gets on everything.
Oh yeah, I had black all over my hands.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, this is not going to work.
He was in a rush, and
yeah,
as I say, we cater to those that need to get things done quickly. It is still something that carries a cost to it, and I think he learned a lot. And I believe I told him, I said, dude, what is this for? He said, oh, it's it's for a game. I said, okay, why is this not digital? Why is it not digital? And you could just see the hamster started turning at 1,000,000 miles an hour to go down that path. He said, I don't know. And that was like kind of the last conversation that we had before he left. He said, all right, I'm getting back on the road. I said, you do know it's late. He said, I know, but I made a promise. I'm going to deliver. I said, well, I guess that's all that matters.
Well, he also said, because I paid him, and he said, I'll give you half back, like I won't, you don't have to pay me, kind of thing. And then, if I don't have it by this certain date, and then he's like, oh shit, I got to get there by midnight, kind of things. He was showing up at my house. Yeah.
I mean, I'll give the kid credit. He definitely tried. But that is also the story of let's not wait until the last minute. I think he had some printer problems or something, which is typical, right? 3D printers don't always work right. As I told you before we started, this Prusa had a print fan error overnight. Why? Don't know. Clicked resume and it works just fine. So have no idea why that occurred. But those failures occur, and that's the value of having multiple machines.
Well, and also too, I mean, this was a internship for him, and a lot of the internships are free, but I thought, all right, I'm going to at least give him like a set amount of money,
I like
towards this. Yeah. And then, he's learning more than just the project itself, right? Like he's learning that, okay, you got to meet deadlines, you got to make your customer happy. And then, all right, if your customer wants something specific and you can't deliver, can you come up with an alternative solution? And, he did. So, or it sounds like you nudged him in the right direction, but I'm much happier actually with this digital version.
I would be too. I think, and this is the fun thing about product development, right? 3D printing is not always the answer. Hi, other makers in the chat. It's not always the answer.
Right?
There are sometimes better answers. And if you have the availability, the knowledge, the tools, and the skills to go into an AR or VR aspect for a product that does not immediately require being physical, it is almost always an easier bet because you pay once and that's
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you can charge access to it from then on, right?
Right. Right. Well, I'm giving it as a free thing that's in the
Mm-hmm.
back of the book. It's just like this extra cool thing it's in the book. But he then worked on another project with other students, and they were working on building a gaming app for me that uses certain components of the card game.
Cool.
And yeah. And so they got it to a certain level. I still need to take it forward to the next level. And I'm not sure if I'll use other students for that or just take it pro. That's another project, right?
We worked with
Back to your point.
we worked with some Florida Poly interns. They did a Z-axis for one of our printers, and I got to assemble it at some point, but it is at the point where it's almost too heavy for me to lift. So maybe that's another internship thing. And if you are out there looking to get an internship for the summer or to buff up a resume, hit us up, YouTube at 3dmusketeers.com. We are always looking for people that have a sincere and passionate desire to learn and understand that the startup life is an interesting one, to say the least. Deidre, do you have any parting thoughts?
Just get out there and create.
Hell yeah. I like that. I like that. Well, Deidre, thank you so much. Anyone that's watching or listening out there in radio land, links to get the card game are in the description. When the book comes out, we'll update the description so you guys can go ahead and pick up a copy. Take a look at this game. I not only have one, I have 2 copies. Because I have one that's signed, and I told DJ, I said I want you to sign this one, and I will never use it, and then I want to buy one that I can use, because it's cool. I said I don't know where you're going, but you're going places, and I want to have your signature on something just in case.
Oh, that's nice. That's really kind. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, and thank you so much for coming on. But yeah, that's all I think we got, guys. Go take a look at everything that Deidre is doing. Follow her on all the social medias. But that's all we have for you all today. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one.